What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Want to do a little bit different of a channel here with you and talk about some NASCAR fantasy sports. I have Casey Steinman with me, who's the regional director for USA Today. Obviously, myself, if you did know, have been a NASCAR crew member since right about 2007. We're going to give you a fantasy perspective on this Sunday's Dover International Speedway 47th Annual AAA 400 Drive for Autism. It's a lot of words, but it is usually a competitive race. So, Casey, why don't you go over some of the trends that you see from a fan's perspective with Dover?
Well, I think that what we see from a manufacturer standpoint is that Chevy tends to dominate this race. The last 7 races at Dover, both in the spring and the fall, have been won by Chevy, mostly by Jimmy Johnson, Harvick, Jeff Gordon sprinkled in there, Tony Stewart in 2013 in that spring race in a Chevy. So I'm looking at the Chevy drivers right now and some of the top teams in Chevy. I think they're going to have strong finishes, and a lot of them are starting up front.
You know, Dover is an interesting track. Dover has an extremely difficult pit road, more so since they revamped it a couple years ago. Probably a lot of people remember Matt Kenseth going up on the water barriers there. It's also a concrete track, so it actually has, in my opinion, a little bit of an issue of getting rubber into the track. You'll constantly see the track will clean itself. There's been some weather in the area with Dover, although they did get a truck race in. Qualifying was rained out. It's going to go by speed. That's going to put Kevin Harvick on the pole. So when we talk about drivers, your premium drivers that you really like in this race, what are the names that you're focused on?
Again, I'm looking at the Chevy guys, but I'm also looking at the Joe Gibbs Racing guys. You know, these guys have had a stellar season early in the season. They came on late last season. They made some changes in the engineering department, and TRD has really done a fantastic job of getting these guys competitive again. So, I like Jimmy. I like Harvick starting up front. Kyle Busch, of course, you can never discount him. Carl Edwards with multiple wins already this year. And the guy that I really kind of like this week is Denny Hamlin starting in the 6th position. I think we're going to see him get up towards the front early and probably stay up there. I think Kyle Busch and Harvick will have their hands full with Carl Edwards and Denny Hamlin.
You know, one of the things I've noticed, I guess, from still remaining active in the sport is the Toyotas have really got a hold of the downforce. And this is going to be the last week under this package. And downforce is a big deal at Dover. Let's not discount that. So I'm going to stick with some Toyotas as well. I really like Kyle Busch starting up front. I really like Martin Truex Jr. Had some rough patches here, but this is a really good track for him. Unfortunately, a lot of his good luck comes down to his pit crew. And I also like Matt Kenseth starting 10th, but, a little bit further back than you would expect. How about some mid-tier drivers that you want to go with?
Well, I'd like Truex too, and I think that partnership with Toyota has been fantastic for that single car team out of Denver. I expect that they're going to be up there this week as well. But like you said, they're their own biggest enemy. So we'll see what they do. But I also like going back, starting in the 12th position, Austin Dillon in that Chevy, Chase Elliott starting 13th in the Chevy. I'm really stuck on these Chevy guys, and I think guys like that. Jimmy Johnson's going to be a little bit behind them, so I think it's going to be really competitive in that 6 to 12 spot. And a lot of Joe Gibbs guys and Chevy guys in that range. So I'm gonna stick with those guys right there, and I think they're going to be competitive, especially the young guys. We've seen this year already. Some of these young guys like Chase Elliott and Austin Dillon, they've been super competitive. Outside of a couple of mistakes that maybe weren't their fault, a couple of errors that could have been avoided on pit road, these guys could have finished a lot higher in some of these races already this year. So I'm looking for them to be strong this weekend.
Yeah, I would agree with most all those picks. Some picks I think they're going to be strong. I like Jamie McMurray back in 24th. I also, even though there was a practice crash, had to go to a backup car, I really like Tony Stewart. Didn't get a whole lot of speed in practice. Going to start 34th. This is a place he's won before, but he is going to be starting a little far back, so you don't have that loss risk with the points. But I think Tony Stewart might be a really good pick. I'm going to go through some guys I don't like, and then you can kind of voice your opinion on those, because some of mine actually agree with some of the ones you did like. I don't like Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I know Roush has kind of had that be their flagship car this year, but starting a little too high. He tends to tear up a lot of equipment, and this place is brutal on equipment. I don't like Ryan Newman starting 8th again. There's some questions whether he's even going to be in that car this year. apart from Menard, who's really been hit or miss, the RCR cars have kind of fallen off. And to continue with that thought, I don't like Austin Dillon. I think he's just starting a little bit too high for my tastes. And as far as rookies go, Dover is historically not good to rookies, so I personally wouldn't go with Austin Dillon. Another guy I would want to stay away from would be Kyle Larson. I know Kyle Larson had a good run here in last year's race. I think he finished third, but he tends to ride up against that wall. And I think sooner or later he just jumps the berm on that, gets into the wall, and it's going to end his day here pretty quickly, although I wouldn't mind it because he is starting pretty far back. Again, it's just not a risk I'm willing to take. It seems like every time I go with Kyle Larson, I live to regret it. Another guy I would stay away from would be Clint Boyer. That 15 car has been down on power all year long, and you come to a track that needs power, you need that at Dover, and I think he's going to struggle a lot as well.
I'm really on the same page with you with two of those guys. Boyer being the first one. I think he's been a train wreck this year. Just been a really tough season for those guys, and they really are lacking power. They're qualifying the back of the field almost every week, and they're finishing back there with a couple of exceptions here recently. But I think you're right. This week he finishes at the back. McMurray, I think I agree with you there. He's starting a little too high. Stenhouse burns a lot of people. He qualifies well. He tends to tear his equipment up and finishes towards the back. But a couple other guys that I'm really not big on this week. Bissell starting in 16th. He's kind of on that same track. He's just not qualifying well. He's not racing well. They're making a lot of errors on pit road. So I'm looking for Bissell, McMurray, Boyer, some of the bigger names that people are more familiar with. I see those guys finishing mid-pack best this week. And I think it's also worth noting that the highest starting position that's won Dover in the last 8 races is 22nd. So I think anything in the low to mid 20s back to 40th, I don't think you'll see those guys anywhere near the front at any point during the race this weekend.
One final thought on that. A guy I really do like as well would be David Reagan. He's starting back in 27th, but since that team picked up those MWR cars, they've done pretty well. I can't recall exactly who was in the 55 the last time they went to Dover, but I'm pretty sure they finished 10th. They were kind of running through some drivers. Would not surprise me if that 23 car is really last year's 55 car. And David's got some guys in front of him I think he can pass, including, Casey Mears, Trevor Bain, and I'm sure Brian Scott starting 17th. You said, Greg, they'll probably find their way back. Maybe not to David Reagan right away, but I think he's been really competitive, surprised a lot of people in that car. So would love to know your guys' opinions on this. Appreciate you watching this video, and we will be back next week.